Hello, Ilana. I'm absolutely delighted to be chatting with such a multi-award winning writer. Myself and Steve Evans here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a pleasure to be on.
Hi, Alan. I'm really pleased to meet you finally. I've heard a lot about you through Terry, and I believe you're in North Virginia. So, how is North Virginia Oh, it's not this evening where you are, is it? It's early
Afternoon.
afternoon.
It's yeah, almost two. It's good. There's sort of a feeling of buoyancy and jubilance here because of the elections last night. But
Ah,
we don't have to talk politics, but we had some big elections here.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Can you give us the basics
Yeah,
then?
well, we had the governor's race last night. But the results came in, and yeah, and the Democrat won, who happens to be a former case officer for the CIA,
wow,
Wow.
same as me, Abigail Spanberger. So it's an exciting day.
brilliant.
Ah, right. Excellent. Excellent. So, speaking of which, well, we'll come back to that bit, I think, about CIA because we want to touch on that, obviously.
Yeah.
But our last podcast was with one of our regular guests, as you know, David Jarvis.
Yeah,
He's the author of the Mike Kingdom thriller
yeah.
series. I think I've read them all. I think Terry's
Yep,
read all but
yep.
one.
All but
Or
one,
have you
yeah.
read them all now?
The latest
Yeah.
is I'm not.
Anyway, David mentioned how much he admired your debut novel.
Oh,
So that's why we're here now, The
that's
Peacock
so
and the
nice.
Sparrow. So
So
tell us
nice.
how you two got to know each other. Was it? I think David did tell us, but if you can recap that bit for us.
I feel like it was just on social media, like maybe on Twitter. And he was so lovely. And I still need to read his book. I'm excited to read it. But yeah, I think we had a lot in common, and we were sort of chit-chatting. And he's just been lovely. He's one of many British spy novelists that I've become friends with. And it's one of the best things I found about being a writer is the writing community. It's just awesome and supportive. Very different from the world of spying, which was not, much more kind of cutthroat, I would say, and every man for himself.
And from the CIA to the literary world. Tell us how you were recruited. Well, we're going to focus on your novel, but just to sort of touch around the edges of the CIA experience. Did you apply for a job with the CIA, or you
I
headhunted, perhaps?
No, it's kind of a myth, that myth that they tap you in a bar. I don't know anyone that happened to. Um, No, I applied. It was quite mundane. It was like I sent an application, just like you would apply to be, a secretary or a clerk or whatever. It's an extensive process. It took about 2 years to get.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They do an extensive background investigation. There are so many hurdles you have to jump to be a case officer. You have to have polygraphs. You have to take tests. It's basically like an IQ test. You have to speak to a psychiatrist,
hmm.
um, so they can make sure you're not crazy. I don't know how well I don't know how well it all works because all these like traders have Aldrich Ames, etc. They've
Yeah.
all passed all these hurdles. So and famously, the polygraph has never failed to catch a spy, a traitor.
Huh?
So I'm not, the jury's out on how effective their method is
Okay.
for screening applicants.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It tells a different story when you see it on TV, an American series with CIA about, well, as you've already explained, like headhunted, this, that, and the other, and it's
Yeah,
quite comical. And I should imagine it's
exactly.
nothing like that in real
It's
life. Yeah.
not. And I think they used to do that in like the 50s or, when it was sort of an old boys network and they had this sort of Ivy League old boys network and they would recruit from that. And it was sort of who you knew. But it hasn't been like that for decades.
Anyway,
Yeah.
moving on, your debut novel then, The Peacock and the Sparrow. It's won multiple awards and has been highly praised for its authenticity of the time and place. And it's based directly on is it based directly on your actual CIA experience in wartime Baghdad? Did you keep a diary of your time? Is it based on any of that or
Yeah,
is it just
definitely.
on
I,
it?
I drew a lot from my experience serving in war, serving in the Middle East. And then I lived in Bahrain for 2 years during the Arab Spring, same period as my book, although I lived there after I left the CIA. So I sort of transposed my experience working as a case officer onto Bahrain, where I'd lived, but was not a case officer. And I just felt like Bahrain was the better lens to tell my story. But yeah, I drew a lot from my experience, the tradecraft, everything from surveillance detection routes to dead drops to the general feeling of being a spy, which was really my goal, was to convey like the visceral sense of what it was like to be a spy, specifically to manipulate people, to be manipulated, the toll it takes on you, and the difficulty of choosing right and wrong and good and bad, and the sort of murky world that you operate in.
Okay, so is the story factual, or you've just plucked it out off your head and added some finer detail in that may be true or may not be true? Is there elements of both in there?
It's an element of both. I mean, I think the story's fictional, the characters are fictional, but it's very much a real geopolitical context. The events are almost all real except for the ending, which is counterfactual. But in fact, it's all based on the real royal family, which is why I changed the names. And in fact, at the beginning of the book, there's a bombing in Adliya, which is an expat neighborhood of Bahrain, and 5 bombs go off. And that actually happened same time while I was there. And it was exactly in my book, both the monarchy points at the insurgents and the insurgents point the finger at the monarchy. They both say the other side is responsible for the bombing. And that's, the essence of my book is this conflict between the monarchy and the insurgency, which is the Arab Spring. Saudi is backing the monarchy. Iran is backing the insurgents, all based in real life, open sources. New York Times has written about it. And in fact, that's exactly what happened in real life. The two sides pointed fingers at each other. And I was there at the time. It was an area, Adliya, where expats hung out. We would sip coffee. We would, it was this sort of decadent, hedonistic bubble. We'd nosh on our caramel flan, and So then these bombings went off and kind of shattered that bubble. And the two sides pointed fingers at each other. And I thought it was such an interesting dynamic. And I thought I got to put that in the book. That's kind of how I wanted to start off the book. And when I started writing the book when I got back from Bahrain. I had all these sort of years of espionage that were still haunting me, and operations I'd done where I'd made decisions that affected people's lives, and I don't know if they were the right ones, and they really were plaguing me, and I felt I wanted to get it down on paper, but I also wanted to write about the Arab Spring, because I felt like not only was it the perfect lens, this interesting, murky conflict where there's no clear right side, but no one had really written about the Arab Spring, and I know most Americans at least don't know much about it. So that was my thinking.
Touching on that now, the sort of the authenticity of it, with your CIA credentials, was there a vetting process that you had to go through? Was Shane Collins, was his background checked, your main character? Did it have to go through, is it a thing called the CIA Publication Review Board?
Exactly.
Were the scenes or details they had to fight for or rework?
Oddly enough, yes. So there's a publication review board, and I had to get it cleared before I showed it to anyone. So since I'm a first-time author, I had to get it cleared before I could show it to an agent, before I could query agents, certainly before my agent could query publishers. So literally nobody saw it. I mean, I sat in a Starbucks for 5 years writing this book, and it was a vacuum. Nobody. I had nobody to bounce ideas off of, nobody to read a page and say, "Oh, that's shit." Can I say that? Or,
yeah, of course. Yeah.
or
that's horrible. That's horrible. I've never heard of any of the writers having to go through that, not being able to have a springboard.
Exactly. I mean, it was a real leap of faith, because I thought I could have just wasted 5 years of my life and written the worst thing ever. Yeah, but luckily I did that for 5 years and then I submitted to the Publication Review Board. Luckily, it was really easy. They gave it to me back in a couple months with minimal redactions.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking just a couple words, and then I was able to show it to people. It hasn't always been like that. They've been heavier handed in the past, but they've become more reasonable over the years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty good. They didn't redact much and didn't alter much at all. That's
No,
really impressive, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So what's been the most surprising reaction you've received from your readers, either from people in intelligence or like, your own roles, or in the literary world?
I would say two things. One, how much the intelligence community and former spooks and those military, anyone who's kind of been in that world have embraced my book because it's not a glamorous, particularly flattering portrait, I think, of that world. It certainly doesn't glamorize the CIA. I don't think to me, my book is not overtly critical of the CIA. That was not my goal. It's not like a tell-all about the CIA. But it certainly, I think, is unvarnished and kind of doesn't pull any punches about the reality of the kind of the dark underbelly of espionage. And I didn't know how that would land with, my former colleagues, and they have actually been some of my biggest fans, I would say. And in fact, there's a creative writing group at the CIA called Invisible Ink. It's a great name. And,
What a name, yeah.
I know. And they invited me to come speak. This was about a year or so ago, which was such a highlight for me. It was the first time I'd gone back to the building in 15 years. But I think what resonated with the community is the realism. I think there aren't a ton of writers out there who are writing spy novels that are really unvarnished and realistic. So I think they were happy to see that. The other thing that surprises me among readers in general is how people conflate me and my protagonist, which I have to say it's not the most pleasant thing to be conflated with. He's a pretty unlikable guy with a lot of flaws.
Alcoholic.
He's alcoholic. He's a womanizer. He's divorced. I mean, I'm basically like none of the things he is.
Good to know.
But although I will say I do share some things with him, like sort of a distaste for the profession and a feeling in middle age, like, what am I doing with my life? I mean, I have to confess that sort of prompted me to write the book. But that said, I mean, on the surface, we're not at all alike. And yet I get from a lot of readers that somehow I'm endorsing him, or because he's kind of an unsavory guy, I'm somehow supporting his values. And that was a surprise to me. I think this is a trend in literature that is not good, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think, writers need to have literary license. They need to be able to write, unsavory, unlikable characters and not just feel good books.
Yeah.
But now that the shackles are off now, you don't have to wait for another 5-year period. But as we mentioned, you've won multiple awards for your debut novel. Has that changed how you approach your second novel? And are you working on this now? Is there more pressure? Maybe more confidence? Maybe both of them?
I am working on my second novel.
Excellent.
Way more pressure. Definitely not more confidence, I would say.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm so honored by all by the accolades I've gotten. And I mean, I never in a million years thought that I would get them. And I was happy just to get a book deal, honestly. So it's been a dream. I'm so blown away by the response. It does make me feel a certain pressure to sort of live up to, I don't want to disappoint my readers. And I want to, I would love to write something that resonates with people as much as the Peacock and the Sparrow.
Okay. Did you ever feel like giving up during that 5-year period?
Sorry.
Did you ever feel like giving up and thinking, nah, let's do something else over that 5 year period when you sort of waiting, you're in a bit of a limbo?
Yeah, I mean, I do, yes and no. I mean, I do remember moments. I remember reading my manuscript at one point where I was like, I hate this. This is the worst book ever written.
Yeah,
And what did I just do with 5 years of my life? But for the most part, I was really committed. I believed in my story. I had enough good in it. I saw enough good in it that that I felt committed, that so I really, I had, I guess, the faith to stick with it. And so overall, no. Overall, I felt I was pretty motivated. And I was pretty, I felt pretty confident in it, I
okay.
guess.
When you're writing a book, so are you? What's your writing process? You're a plotter, a pantser. Do you outline meticulously? What's your method? We have so many different
Yeah.
authors we speak to, and they have so many different ways of doing it. So
Yeah.
purely interested in how you do it.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't outline. I have a sort of rough idea in my head. I know the beginning and I know the last scene. I mean, I've only written two. This is only my second book, although I have um, started and abandoned 12 drafts in between my first and second. So, um, but so I typically have the last scene in mind, the ending, the first scene, and I have an idea where the story wants to go. I don't know all the specific stepping stones along the way. I kind of figure those out. I'm finding my second book's much harder than my first. And I think for my third, I'm going to give outlining a try because people swear by it. So, we'll see.
Do you think that the ending of your book, because if you outline it first and you know where you start and where your end is, do you think the ending of your book could change based on how the book pans out throughout? Do you think you'd ever change the ending based on things that are happening as you're writing?
Right. Yeah. I mean, at a macro level, no. I generally have a good idea at a macro level of how I want it to end. I do like sometimes, the little twists and turns near the end or the explanations, the links, things like that can change. Like those seem to evolve and develop. But based on my first and second, no, I pretty much know exactly how I want it to end. Right down to like the actual details of the last scene.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've had all sorts. We've had authors writing one of the last chapters and found out they've actually killed someone off earlier in the book and brought them back by mistake. Little things like that, which are very important, obviously. So it's really interesting to find out.
Are most the authors that you interview plotters or pantsers?
Yeah.
Well, bit of both, really, Terry.
Yeah, that's for me. I've only written one novel myself, but I had to plot it out. I see it as like building a house. You've got to lay the foundations there, and you got to have diagrams. You got to have like a blueprint for what comes next. But other writers we've spoken to, no one springs to mind immediately.
I can't think of a name now.
Yeah, they write down just a what if, and then a sentence, and the whole novel, whole 90,000 words, is based on that simple sentence. I can't get my head around anyone who can work that way.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, and certain characters come to life and create their own path almost in some people's
organically.
Heads. Organically, it just happens.
Yeah.
And you think, I know where that character's going, but as you're writing, it changes, and the character almost writes its own path. It's
for sure.
That's quite strange. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Did any of your characters sort of come alive? I know one scene I wrote. I had in my notes a particular young lady, Rhonda. She enters like the middle of the chapter. As I'm sort of writing away typing on the keyboard, Rhonda walks into the bedroom and, hang on a second, where are you coming from? You're not due in later. But it fitted perfectly. Looking at it afterwards, it was like a sort of weird magical moment. I had to go and walk away in the garden, ponder life. But I think that's when you're in the groove of writing. Did that happen for you at all? Did Shane or Rashid Almeza, did they ever come and sort of do things that you hadn't plotted for?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think, when you're, as you said, getting into the groove, when your book kind of takes on a life of its
Yeah,
own. Yeah, I mean, by the end of my book, certainly, or earlier, I felt like the characters felt real to me, especially Collins, maybe because I was writing in first person. So I sort of tried to live inside his head for 5 years, so that really. And I think it's one of the beauties of writing. I actually think it teaches you a kind of empathy,
of
because
course, yeah. Yeah.
when you try to really get inside a character's head, especially if it's not like you have to kind of understand, why is this character doing these things that I wouldn't do? And you do start to kind of understand. You develop the backstory, you think about the motivations. And that's, I think, it's a beauty of writing, and maybe for readers too. So, yeah, I mean, I felt like I understood Collins, and that he had become quite real to me.
Yeah.
And when readers have questions or criticize him, I find myself defending him because I feel like I know him, I understand him. Um, and during the editing process, I remember my agent had some edits, and we would go back and forth, and I would say, oh, well, Collins wouldn't do this, or Collins would do this, or, to your point, that they
Yeah.
kind of take it for their own.
Well, to a certain extent, well, to a large extent, actually, the novelist is a psychologist. You understand the motivations, what pushes someone, what their fears are, what their ambitions are.
Agreed. Absolutely. 100%.
Okay.
Their abilities. Yeah.
Yeah. What movies or fiction do you enjoy? Is it the thriller, the spy thriller yourself, or any particular genre?
Yeah, oddly enough, before I was published, I didn't really even think about genres, or I didn't really know they existed. I feel like it's a publishing construct, like
Yeah.
mystery. Fine, I just didn't even think about that. And I read a lot of kind of what I guess are termed classics, not really mystery or spy novels. Some of my favorite books have nothing to do with spying. An American Tragedy by Theodore Dreiser, Lolita by Nabokov, a great British book, The Collector, Fowles. John Fowles,
Yeah.
The Collector. Oh my God, one of my favorite books of all. It's so good. Have you guys read it?
No, I'm trying to rack my brain now, trying to
Oh,
think of
you
it.
have to read it. It's so good. It's so
I'm making a
good.
note. What was the name of the author again?
John Fowles, Fowles.
John Fowles. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's about a kind of a psychopath who kidnaps a woman.
Yeah.
He collects butterflies, and then he collects women.
Oh, lovely.
Whoa. You said you're onto your second novel, or you're
Oh, yeah.
writing your second novel. Is there any, are you going on for a trilogy, or are you going to go further than that and hope to go 4 or 5? Or is this, these two going to be standalone books, or are they both connected? I assume them.
Yeah, so this one I was going to just do another standalone for my second. I ended up I found that Almisa, the female character, no character I was writing for my second book felt as interesting as her. So she's the focus of my second book, and it's a little bit of a prequel. It's her story before the Peacock and the Sparrow, but it's a standalone, and you don't really need to read the Peacock and the Sparrow. And then I think I'm done with those characters. I do think I prefer standalone books.
Okay, so what is going to come after that? Do you know where you're going to go after?
Oh, I have some ideas, but I'm so loath to say anything because I changed my second novel 15 times. So
understand totally. Have you, by the way, Terry, have you read The Peacock and the Sparrow yet?
I haven't. I've just started it.
Right,
I've got the Kindle version.
Obviously, I'm very interested because if it's anything like one of my Kingdom series, with David Jarvis, I'll be really interested in it. It's my type of book for sure. But anyway, just moving on, because Terry said we are running out of time a little. What advice would you give to aspiring writers? I know you've only written one novel, but even so, what advice would you give to someone who wants to pick up a pen and write for a book for the first time?
I would say,
especially those coming from unconventional backgrounds, if you like, CIA or Yeah.
I would say first, find your voice. Don't be afraid to have a distinctive voice. I think it's a crowded field, and I think a lot of writers write to an audience, like they write what they think people will read. I don't know that that's a good strategy. I think write for yourself, write what feels authentic to you, write what makes you distinctive. Even if some people aren't going to like it, and I think that's a good thing. That means you have a distinctive voice. So stick with your distinctive voice is my first suggestion. Number two is to really be tenacious. I'm sure every writer says that, just persistent, because they say, the difference between like a writer and an author is just dedication or something like that, but really it's just put pen to paper and read as well,
Yeah. One that comes up a lot is write what you know. If you know your subject, like you obviously do with CIA and that sort of background, write what you know about, and you're halfway there. Obviously, you've still got to do research.
Yes.
But people try and write about things they don't know, and they fall over backwards then, and they don't get a good plot.
Agreed. But I would also say that the term "know" is a broad term. Like it doesn't have to be something necessarily experiential or professional. It could be an emotional truth too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like being a mother, or going through grief or something like that.
Any chance that we're going to see the Peacock and the Sparrow on the big screen or the small screen? Do you have any inklings of movie rights being sold or?
Yeah. I hope so. It's been optioned.
Brilliant.
And, great.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. But I'm sure there's a long road between option and production, and it's a long shot, I think, for any writer. So I'm keeping my expectations high and my hopes high and my expectations low.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be, it's a long shot, I think, but you never know. So I hope
I'm such a wood
to announce soon, but I'm not sure what I can say. So
I've got fingers crossed for you. Do you know there's one writer I chatted to, Mike Craven, and he said that a television company bought the rights to his novel for it not to film it because they were producing another series that was similar in style. So they bought the rights off him to keep it for a year.
Oh,
without filming. Yeah, but he said he got paid, handsome.
Well paid.
He got about £80,000.
Did he know? I guess he knew that going in. Like he agreed.
I think his initial excitement when he contacted him was, wow, I'm going to be on the big screen.
Yeah.
But then they offered him a huge amount of money not to film it. And now he said, I'd be happy if another 5 companies come in and not film it, but give me a ton of money.
That's so interesting because I feel like books, our films and books are both like, you can have similar plots, but the series would be totally different. It's all in the execution. So that's sort of interesting to me that they felt threatened by.
Yeah, absolutely. But just quickly, how did you get in contact with your publisher? Did they find you, or did you batter on their door, sort of thing?
So I found an agent first. That was my first big step. Yeah. And I just cold pitched agents. I had no idea what I was doing. It was like my spy days, like calling up someone and saying, will you come work, cold pitching someone. Want to work for the CIA? That's what it was like. I was literally just emailing people I was searching on the internet, people I thought would be a good fit. And it's the worst way to do it. I now know it's the worst way to do it. I didn't realize how audacious that was. But it worked for me. So, that was
worked. It's great.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. Would you recommend a career in the CIA, by the way, before we
do I recommend it? Yes, overall, I had an uneven experience. But I was there like 15 years ago, and I think the organization has changed for the better.
Yeah. Okay.
No, fair enough. That's great. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Ilana, looks like time has caught up with us. But listen, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and really appreciate you spending your time with us.
This was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure.
Thanks. It's been great. Yeah, I loved it.
Best wishes with that film deal. I can't wait to see that on the big screen.
That would be great. Yeah, that would be.
We will see.
All right. But for now, Ilana, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.